It can be a challenge to get from scratch food on the table for every single meal, day after day. That's why today I'm going to be sharing my tips for how I get that done while I make breakfast, lunch, and dinner for my family of 11. Thanks to Kiwico for sponsoring today's video. More on them in a bit. Every successful week when it comes to the kitchen, when it comes to food, starts with just a little bit of prep work. Today, that prep work looks like getting meat out of the freezer to start thawing. Of course, this started by having a well-stocked freezer. I like to pick up meat in bulk, so I get half a cow at a time, half a beef. My family doesn't like it when you say cow because it's not, if you're in agriculture, you'll understand you shouldn't say cow, you should say half a beef or side of beef. A whole hog. I like to stock several whole chickens. Our freezer is really full right now because our kids are preparing for a market where they're making something from scratch and freezing it. Anyways, we are actually getting quite low on meat. My beef is currently sitting at the butcher right now. I just called in my cut order, so we'll be restocking. But if you have the protein to pull from and some easily available sides, things like starches, potatoes, rice, pasta, and then some fresh things and some dairy, you can almost always pull that together into a meal, even if it's not the most perfect meal. So that is where I start every week. Even if I don't have a plan, I know that when I get meat out and it starts to thaw, if I have it in my fridge in a 9x13 dish so it can slow thaw throughout the week, and catch any of what might come out of it into a 9x13 dish, I can always be prepared to make something. When you are cooking from scratch 3 times a day, the kitchen is always open to an extent. You never can completely clean it up perfectly and then keep it that way for the rest of the day or the week or whatever. Something is always either thawing or simmering or baking or started in some way for the next meal. This is key because a lot of times it isn't that something is all that time consuming with your hands-on time. It's that it takes thinking of it a bit ahead of time. So mixing up a sourdough boule or some buns or some pizza dough in a bowl takes very little time, and throughout the morning you might go visit it a little bit here and there to do a stretch and fold, but hands-on time, we're talking 5-10 minutes, even if it's whole grain, completely from scratch. But if you don't get that started in the morning or the day before, you will not have those buns for your burgers the next day. So just always keeping something going, not really thinking, okay, what will I use this for? Just knowing that in the future you'll need food. You'll need broth. So if you have some bones, get those started on the back of the stove simmering to make a broth. If you have dried beans and you're not sure if you want to make chili or if you want to have those as a side for something or some kind of bean salad, whatever it may be, getting them soaking so that you can at some point cook them. The worst case scenario, if you come up with nothing to make the beans into, you can put them in a Ziploc and freeze them. That way you have beans that were cooked from dry in the freezer. It never hurts to get something started. If you get a little crazy with doughs and you make 5 different types of dough, you can let them ferment in the fridge. You can eventually pop them in the freezer. You can bake them, then freeze them. You're not going to go wrong starting something. Another great thing to always do is make double if you can. If you have the ingredients thought out, make double and eat leftovers. Or of course you can always pop it in the freezer. But today I'm making 2 lasagnas and we'll eat 1 today and we'll eat 1 either tomorrow or the next day. Sometime in the next couple days, we will definitely enjoy having a couple lasagnas. If I'm making something that has several steps, kind of like lasagna, but it's ultimately a really easy thing to serve to the family because they lap it up and it doesn't require a lot of toppings. You just cut it and put it on a plate. I always try to make double. Something like chicken pot pie is another example of this, where it's a big casserole dish, it's a multi-step process, but if you make double or triple, then you don't have to make dinner another time this week. Right now we are in a very busy season of life. It's our homeschool year. We are in the middle of a house build, and of course we have 9 children. So in the kitchen, I'm trying to keep things simple so that we can still have from scratch meals without spending a ton of time. And then I'm also always looking for ways to engage their minds, keep them busy, happy, and curious so they can learn something independently. That's why I'm super excited to be partnering today with Kiwico. Kiwico is on a mission to inspire kids to be creative and innovative. Each and every project is built for kids to make, to explore, to discover, helping them to lean into their curiosity and learn something that gives them confidence. Kiwico has lines designed for all ages, so they have something age appropriate that they can learn from and work on. My older children really love the Maker Crate. It challenges them. They have to read through all the instructions, but they enjoy it because at the end they have something they're proud of. My middle kids love working on the Kiwi Crate, which shows kids how the world works through science and art projects. The Atlas Crate helps my middle kids to explore new countries and cultures. Tinker Crate and Eureka Crate both really have a focus on engineering and really allow my children to get hands-on and experiment. All of the lines have a focus on STEAM activities, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math. I love that they come with everything you need in the crate, so you don't have to go searching for things around your house. You can hand it to your child and keep them busy for a really long time. With the additional books that come with it, there are several different ways that you can use each crate. It's not just one thing and done. Kiwico also makes a fabulous Christmas gift. And right now, Kiwico is offering a discount for Farmhouse on Boone viewers. If you want to give your kids the joy of creating this Christmas season, use my code FARMHOUSE for 50% off your first crate for kids ages 3 and up at kiwico.com/farmhouseyt. I will also leave it linked down in the description box below. I think my Instant Pot must be on its way out because the saute function no longer gets the meat browned on both sides. One of my sisters said this happened to her and that means it's on its way out. And she actually said it happened to her a couple times. I think this is the first time it's happened to me, but it's okay because for now I will just put that pot right on the heat on the stovetop and brown it that way, apply a lot of heat that way. Then I can just drop it right back down into the Instant Pot and get my meal going. So my next tip for getting from scratch meals on the table 3 times a day is to focus on good old-fashioned meat, potatoes, and vegetables. I think about our in-home date nights that Luke and I do usually once a week. I thaw out some steaks, I cut up a couple potatoes, an onion, or usually half an onion for just the 2 of us, a jalapeno. I put some butter in a cast iron skillet, get it really hot, brown the steaks on both sides, cook them till they're about medium rare, set the steaks aside. Then I have this delicious fat that came off of the steaks mixed with some butter. I put my potato in there, get it nice and crispy. Then usually I'll add some onion and some jalapeno. The point is that some well-cooked meat alongside just basic things, meat, potatoes, whatever vegetables I have, add some herbs on top, makes the most delicious meal. It doesn't require bread. It doesn't require a lot of forethought. It just requires having some meat thawed and keeping in stock potatoes, whatever vegetables that you like. It's such a simple meal. I usually make something else for the kids and then we get the younger kids in bed, and then around 7:30 or 8, I stand at the stove and make our little meal that takes no time at all and think, why don't I always just do meat and potatoes? So today I got a pork shoulder roast going in the Instant Pot, and I'm later on just going to cook up some potatoes, some vegetables, and we'll have meat and potatoes. You can do it with just about any meat. A roast works really well. Chicken breasts are great for it, or a whole chicken. Just focusing on the basics really makes dinner time less overwhelming. Now, on another note, I am also this afternoon, while my pork shoulder roast is in the Instant Pot, going to mix up a couple of different sourdough doughs. I like to do this in batches because I have my scale out. I have my mill out, even though my grain mill does sit on the countertop. But some of you might be getting it out of the pantry or wherever you store it. Getting that all going at once means you have your butter already melting on the stove, which a lot of different doughs require melted butter. So you can put that into both of them while only cleaning your pot once. You have the salt out, you have the measuring teaspoon. I like to get 2 or 3 or even sometimes 4 different doughs going. I do stretch and folds throughout the afternoon, and that's another thing that really helps with bulk batch prep is if you're stretching and folding one bowl, you might as well be doing 3 or 4, because even if you're making up some pizza dough, some bread, maybe buns, or, any dough that you might be doing. They all require the same stretching and folding about every 20-ish minutes or so. So you might as well be doing more than one. While I already have a lot of baking ingredients out, I'm already milling whole grains. I'm also mixing up some waffle batter for tomorrow. One thing I've noticed about any type of batter that has a leavener in it, like baking soda or baking powder, they're better if you don't mix them all up with the liquid ingredients. So if you want to make something ahead of time, you can take your dry ingredients like your whole grain flour, your baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, salt, mix that up in one bowl, and then in a separate container, whether that's a half-gallon jar or quart jar, mixing up the milk, the eggs. We're actually out of milk, but I have some coconut milk cans just on hand in the back of my pantry, hardly ever touch them. But if we ever run out of milk, I use that in place of regular milk so that I can use it in like pancakes or waffles, a place where you're not necessarily drinking it, so it's not as noticeable. But now I'm ready for an easy breakfast in the morning. I don't always do this, but when I do, I really appreciate any effort I can do to make mornings easier, to have from scratch, whole grain, on hand, ready to go, throw them together and then put them in the waffle iron is something that will make our mornings so much easier. When it comes to making meat and potatoes, if that seems boring, focus on the basics of making sure you know how to cook each meat so that it's tender, it's not overcooked, it's flavorful. Add things like freshly grated Parmesan cheese to the top, or crushed red pepper flakes, or some parsley. This really helps to elevate it, or vary the types of potatoes. Like I have today, I have some purple potatoes that I picked up. Sometimes I'll do sweet potatoes, maybe add a little bit of maple syrup. Sometimes I will cut them into fry shape and deep fry them. Sometimes, and most of the time, I do them stovetop like I'm doing today. Sometimes we make them mashed. Today, I will put them in the cast iron skillets with some really hot coconut oil so that they get really crispy, and then finish them off in the oven. I'll do this when I'm in a hurry and don't want to stand over the stove very long. I'll get them nice and brown and then put them in the oven. Depending on how long I'm going to be out, will depend on how high I'll put the oven. So if we're going to be outside for a while, like this afternoon, I'll put them in at 325, 350, so that they're nice and crispy when we get back. If I just want a quick place to stash them, get them a little bit more brown while I'm finishing up the rest of the meal, or if I need the burner for something else, I'll put them in at 400, 425 to make them brown quickly before dinner. I'm also continuing to do some stretch and folds on the doughs that I mixed up earlier. I did these sourdough hamburger buns from my blog, farmhouseonboone.com, except I did them with 100% whole wheat. I have certain things that I love with whole grain flour and certain things I prefer a little all-purpose flour. Buns now are a 100% hard white wheat flour type of recipe because they just turned out so fabulously. So what I did was I took my regular sourdough hamburger bun recipe, and for each cup of flour substituted 130 grams of hard white wheat berries milled, and they are so perfect and fluffy. That's definitely going to be my go-to now. Now, I did mention in the past several times that I like to do my sourdough boule with half whole grain, so half hard white wheat berries milled and half all-purpose because of the texture. It just makes it so much better. Well, lately I've been experimenting with 650 grams of hard white wheat berries and only 300 grams of all-purpose. So just a little bit, little less than a third of all-purpose. That's what I did in the bread that I mixed up today. It's been working out so great that I'm really enjoying doing a much higher percentage now of whole grain. I've done it with 100% whole grain. It just doesn't have the same texture on the outside and on the inside of the bread. But now knowing that just 1/3 of all purpose makes it so great, that's what is going to be our go-to. I let my potatoes get a little bit crispy, but man, they're so good. The pork shoulder roast in the Instant Pot is fabulous because once you get it going in the morning, it just cooks low and slow all day, nice and tender. I top it with some Date Lady date chili sauce, serve it with sauerkraut. Such an easy meal. So the kitchen is almost always open. There's always something going, whether it's rising in the refrigerator or on the countertop or fermenting. We do bulk batch prep, especially when it comes to sourdough, almost exclusively when it comes to sourdough. We try to make double when we can. We try to make ahead when we can, and we always have meat thawing. Those are some of my top tips in how our kitchen flows, but also learning how to stretch meals. So for example, when I make whole grain waffles, I almost always top them with peanut butter and serve them with a big glass of raw milk. So we make sure we're getting in plenty of protein. It's something I don't have to cook. I don't have to cook peanut butter. We have jars of that. I don't have to cook the milk, but it adds a lot to the meal that I've prepped. It's the same thing when it comes to leftovers. Even if we don't eat a very small amount of what I've prepared, we put that in a little glass dish into the fridge, and when we have enough leftovers accumulated, we warm them all up in the oven, and maybe we'll have to serve it with an egg or two or an avocado to stretch it. But we make sure that when there's an opportunity to have a leftover dinner or lunch, which I would say happens 2 or 3 times a week, because when we're always cooking, there's always little bits of things left over. We take that opportunity. No effort wasted. We eat those leftovers. I'm a really big advocate for keeping things simple in the kitchen, mastering a few recipes that you make over and over and over again so you can make them without thinking. So, like the bread I'm making here, you don't have to know how to make every single kind of bread, but it's really nice to master a basic bread recipe that works really well for toast, for sandwiches, whatever that is your family likes. Mastering a basic bun or roll recipe, you can really use those interchangeably. Once you get the process down, it's not difficult to look up the amounts of the ingredients that go in, but mastering the stretch and fold process, the rise process, so that it becomes second nature. You're not spending all of this extra time with a learning curve in the kitchen. I remember when I first got married, I had to look up recipes for everything. At the time, there wasn't Pinterest. Well, maybe there was, but I wasn't on it yet. I found ideas in magazines. I would cut them out and try to just figure out how to cook the basics so that it wouldn't always be such a chore to make dinner. I remember one time there was a concept for using 5 ingredients in like 15 different meals. I don't remember everything that was in it, but there was chicken breast, I believe either pears or apples, maybe Dijon mustard, maybe onions. I can't remember exactly. But I was really inspired and intrigued by that idea because I started to learn that I could get a lot of variety with just using basic things and learning how to cook them well. One thing I throw together in my kitchen all the time is granola. I do this without measuring, without looking at a recipe. The key point I'm trying to make here is I'm not being a perfectionist about this at all, just trying to get some decent sustenance on the table. And granola is great because I can make a large batch of it, have it in a jar, and that works well for snacks, for breakfast. Serving it over top of some homemade yogurt makes for a really easy breakfast for all my children. I also like having it as a late night snack with some raw milk and sliced banana. I mix up about equal parts of coconut oil and honey, add a little bit of cinnamon, some salt, vanilla, and then throw in coconut, chopped walnuts, and or pecans, and some oats until the honey and the oil is kind of sopped up, and then toast it in the oven. That's how I do it. For homemade yogurt, I add a gallon of milk to the Instant Pot, press the saute function to get it hot. Then I let it cool, add in a yogurt starter, and let that sit for about 8 to 12 hours, just depending on what time the starter goes in. We have a flow for things like this in our kitchen. the same things. I make them over and over and over again. I try to make it a little bit interesting by adding some seasonal variety. So to my sourdough boule, I might add some dried cranberries in the wintertime. To my granola, we might have fresh in-season berries, or they might be frozen. We could add some pumpkin spice instead of cinnamon, or we could take the cinnamon out to make it maybe a little bit more summery. We add fresh herbs to our meals when they are in season. We add variety to meat by the way that we cook it, or maybe we'll top it with a sauce. Trying for those simple ways to add variety, but yet really just making the same kind of things over and over and over again, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time I'm in the kitchen. Now, of course, there are times once or twice a week where I love to experiment. I love to make something a little bit different, a little bit exciting if I have a little extra time. But making my basic sourdough boule, making the same types of granola and meals and meats, and the formula is really not reinvented all that often, makes it to where this is actually a doable thing to cook 3 meals from scratch for my large family day in and day out.